All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am excited. Not excited. Like this one was a bad game to watch overall. There were some good things, and we'll get into it. Christian Braun, I think, has really started to level up here. Really started to develop that confidence within Denver's starting lineup, and it's been great to watch. Nikola Jokic also put up video game numbers. Like that's not something that happens for every team. Unfortunately, it came for a loss, and it came like where Denver just didn't really try on the defensive end. And we'll get into why. We'll get into what that really developed into, and just kind of some concerns that I have going forward. Nothing too crazy, and I spoke about it last night on Locked On, that this isn't a long-term issue for Denver, but it is one of those where you keep doing this over and over and over again, and well, you start to develop some habits. So we'll get into it all. Should be interesting. I hope everybody's having a good day. I've seen some criticism already for different parties in the comment section, so share your thoughts in the comments in the live chat on what you think the issue is for Denver and what they can do to fix it. But really quickly, this podcast, as you know, it's brought to you by BetOnline. They continue to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in the new year. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with a large selection of odds on everything from the Super Bowl, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, and much more. They're your number one sports betting source for this 2025. They've got you covered. Every game, every play, every win, BetOnline. The game starts here. Once again, I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really appreciate it. Him is in the comments. She was in the comments last night as well. Now we got to play New York, man. This is what I was talking about. This is what I wrote about. That, hey, if Denver doesn't take Chicago seriously, they go down 0-2, and it's suddenly down 0-3 on this road trip because like, the way that New York is playing, I don't really give Denver much of a chance in that game. Sorry. Like they have a mix of talent that is just really hard for Denver to match up with, including Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, who are an elite 1-5 pick and roll, pick and pop combination. So it's tough. Like that is a tough thing for Denver to have to deal with, but we'll get into that when it happens. For now, let's focus on the Chicago game and some of the issues that we saw last night. Look, Denver loses 129-121. It's not the worst thing in the world, to be clear. It's a road loss against an Eastern Conference opponent. If you're game planning for which games to lose in a regular season, this one on a 5-game road trip isn't the worst thing in the world. Now, this happens, and it has happened relatively frequently to Denver this year, and they're 28-18, and the reason why they are kind of lagging behind the pace that they were at last year is because more games like this have occurred, where they lost earlier in the season to Washington, against New York, or against New Orleans, against Portland. Denver did such a great job of avoiding these kinds of losses last year that they were able to win 57, 58 games, despite the fact that they still looked like they were gassed out by the end of it. Now, they don't look like that. They look like a team that is just trying to figure out what their identity is still. I thought they were through it. I thought they were through it with the home stretch that they were on, but as it turns out, maybe that was just a case of playing mid to bad teams at home. And that is what it is. Now, to be fair, they were up in this game, and I just think they got complacent. I really do. I just think that they got to a place where they were up by 12 at one point, up by 8 at halftime, and you just kind of assume that it's going to happen. You just kind of assume that, look, it's not a big deal. They're going to win. It's going to be fine. And then they let the game slip. And it started in that third quarter where uh, Chicago forced a couple turnovers from Jokic, from Russ, from other guys in the starting unit. Like there were 14 total turnovers from the Nuggets, including 2 from Peyton Watson off the bench, 2 from everybody in the starting lineup except for Jokic, who had 4. And Denver just wasn't precise. They weren't good enough in terms of creating good shots for themselves, for their teammates, and also limiting the shots that Chicago was going to get. Chicago had 32 points in the first quarter, 29 in the second, 32 in the third, 34 in the third, 34 in the fourth. Like they were consistently good on the offensive end. And Denver went 35 points in the first, 33 in the second, 28 in the third, and 25 in the fourth. Denver's offense let them down a little bit in this one, but only because their defense was so bad. Like if their offense was good enough, they probably would have been okay. But you allow Chicago to go on an 11-0 run at the beginning of the fourth quarter when Jokic is off the floor, and you've got 3 of your starters out there, and Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson. And that's a bad sign. That's one where, look, you got to be able to create better shots than what they did. They allowed Patrick Williams to be plus 16, Dalen Terry to be plus 11, Mataz Buzelis, shout out the dunk contest legend now, plus 10 in his 20 minutes. Like that's pretty shaky level of stuff from Denver. And it shouldn't have been that hard, but a lot of things went wrong for Denver in this game, and a lot of things looked pretty dumb. And I think a lot of it, honestly, especially the defensive stuff, I think that there is plenty of fault that can go around. Jokic deserves more criticism than I think a lot of fans are willing to give him at this point because of how much of a burden he has, because of the numbers that he puts up. He doesn't just get a pass, but he gets more leeway, of course, than everybody else does because of what he creates on the other end of the floor. And deservedly so. I totally get it. But like the Bulls attempted 53 threes, and a lot of it was because Joker did not want to leave the paint. He didn't want to leave the paint on the defensive end, whether that was part of the game plan or not. Everybody else seemed like it wasn't part of the game plan, and they were running at different three-point guys and really getting themselves into rotation. And Jokic was one of the guys causing Denver to get into rotation, whether that was the game plan or not. So I look at that and I look at now, he was still a +1. This game wasn't lost because of what Jokic did, but I honestly think that he should have been a +15. The team should have been +20 when he was on the floor, somewhere in that general vicinity, based off of the level that he was playing at. It wasn't like Vucevic was shooting the cover off the ball. He had 20 points on 23 shots. Like it should have been okay. But honestly, with the way, like Joker had 33 points on 21 shots and only 2 free throws. Like it should have absolutely gone the other direction. So it's tough. It's one of those things where the bench definitely let Denver down in this one, but Joker had plenty of opportunities to kind of get them back into it. And second half didn't really inspire a ton of confidence there. Aaron Gordon played the backup 5 in this game. Didn't look good doing it. He had a couple of drives that were nice, but his overall level of effectiveness at that spot is a little bit concerning. The way that he was speaking to Bennett Durando after the Minnesota game, I thought that there was a chance that he could be even starting in this game. That didn't ultimately be the case. I'm surprised that he doesn't look better. I figured that he would look better than where he's been at lately. Peyton Watson looked great defensively, other than a couple of runouts where he overclosed out, and there were just folks that were like Ayo was pump faking and then shooting a relocation 3. That is tough, like if you're Peyton, because he had to cover and put out so many different fires. That's an unfortunate reality there. But his offense was pretty bad. There were a few assists, yes, but the finishing around the rim was bad. I believe he missed a couple of dunks, couple layups. and had a couple bad turnovers that ultimately led to points. And you'll look at the plus minuses in this one. Murray was a minus 16. He was the worst on the team. Julian Strawther minus 15 in 15 minutes. Like, Denver shooters and their outside shot guys not being able to bring much to this game, that's a problem. Denver shot 6 of 27 from 3. Murray was 1 of 5. Julian Strawther's 0 of 2. Those are the guys that you count on for 3-point spacing in a lot of these lineups, especially with that bench group. So is it a surprise that they struggled when those guys combined to shoot 1 of 7 from 3? No, of course not. And so Jamal deserves some criticism for sure. I thought his defense early on in this game was pretty good, but then that kind of fell apart. And you can have individual moments where defense is good, but if not everybody's on the same page on a consistent basis, it's never going to look any better. Like, I thought Christian had good moments defensively. I thought that Jamal had good moments defensively. I thought that Peyton had good moments defensively. Russ was fine. But I just ultimately, it's too much for one team. Like, it's too much for one individual. That you can't just carry the entire defense when Chicago's just going to rotate the ball around the perimeter until they find an open three. It had to be relentless effort. It had to be multiple efforts, and it just wasn't. And Denver gives up 24 made three-pointers. They don't shoot the ball well themselves, and they just couldn't keep pace with what Chicago was doing on the offensive end. So it's unfortunate. This is a pretty difficult place for Denver to be. The defense wasn't good, and it's backsliding. Like, I thought it would be better at this point of the season. They were progressing. They were kind of in that 14 to 16 range. Let me just refresh cleaning the glass here real quick. Oh, that's on the 22-23 season. Yeah, let me reset that. At this time last year, or during the championship year, Denver was the top-ranked offensive team and the 16th ranked defensive team on January 27th, 2023. Now, this season, they are the 4th ranked offense and the 22nd ranked defense. So they're kind of slightly worse in both categories. Now, the offense is clearly elite, but it's also not quite at the level of some of these other Eastern Conference teams like Cleveland, Boston, and New York. Although they are making progress, like they continue to rise in that regard. The offense has not been the issue, of course. The issue is the defense, which was pretty close to league average as soon as like a week and a half ago. But the last 3 games, they've given up a 123, 133, and 129. It's just not good enough. So, look, it's hard. Like, Denver is in a really tough position. They have, and I've seen a lot of criticisms of Booth. I've seen a lot of criticisms of Malone. It's hard to tell sometimes where the issues actually are. I'll get into that on the other side. We've got a super chat here real quick from Boyan, $4.99. Thank you, Boyan. Do you think Denver needs to play slow in the last 7 minutes of the game, as in past years, and not have Westbrook there to close? It's an interesting question. Denver has always been a slow it down team in those moments where Jokic helps you get a good shot. Murray gets a not a good shot, but like can convert on some of the tougher shots, but will generate some good shots for Joker at times. And then they can kind of spray the ball around to others. I think that one of the reasons why they're playing faster is because they need that positive variance. They need those possessions where they get the steal and the run out and the easy dunk. That has really helped their offense, of course. Of course, when you play faster, it leaves you open and vulnerable on the defensive end, and you allow more defensive possessions as a result. So maybe that's not great either. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think that Denver's been such a good 3rd and 4th quarter team for the most part this year that I'm not going to over-index on this game in particular. But I do think that it's at least worth a conversation for when the playoffs come around. And Invisible Man says it here, playing faster suits Braun and Westbrook. And it really does. And Christian Braun, I haven't mentioned him much today. He has been great, and he has really grown up a little bit over the course of these past few weeks. So I do think that playing faster suits this particular team better, whereas in previous seasons, playing slower suited their team. So it's just kind of a natural evolution of who they are. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Christian Braun. I'll mention Zach LaVine, and then we'll talk about urgency and how this is the unfortunate reality of the NBA. Sometimes you can't replicate really caring. We'll be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Appreciate the support as always, folks. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Would really appreciate it as we continue to grow Mile High Sports. It has been awesome to watch. Just a very interesting moment here for Denver. Natalia asks here, are you afraid to call out Booth? No, of course not. No. I genuinely think that Denver's hands are kind of tied behind their back a little bit when they're trying to keep together the core four. This is the unfortunate reality that the Nuggets and Nuggets fans haven't really fully appreciated with the new CBA. Now, there are different things that they could have done. They could have kept Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and then gotten under the second apron in some other way. They could have done a variety of different things. One of the reasons why they went under the second apron was to get somebody like Dario Saric and to pay him the taxpayer MLE. Not a great choice in retrospect. Not a great choice. Natalia adds on here the 3 second-round picks, Zeke and Saric. Absolutely. I've criticized the hell out of all of those decisions at this point. The 3 second-round picks, trading them away to send away Reggie Jackson, was dumb in the moment, and it's dumb now. Think about what Denver could do with some extra draft capital right now in terms of improving their team. I think they really have one pick to trade now at this point, and then they can trade some swaps. And that's just not enough for trying to build out what I think is a roster that isn't good enough to win a title. And so that's a problem. These were bad decisions in the moment. And then the Zeke Naji contract, that's obviously, I've gone over this plenty of times. It was a horrible, ultimately, I didn't think it was bad in the moment, but it's become debilitating for Denver because he's the 5th highest paid player on the team. What really needed to happen was for them to let Zeke Naji go to free agency and not bring him back, and then bring back KCP and pay him what he needed to be paid in order to stay. They didn't even need to start KCP going forward, although you kind of see what's going on with Christian right now. Christian wouldn't be growing this much if he wasn't starting. He's been playing extensive minutes. He's played a whole bunch, averaging 34 minutes a night, somewhere in that general range. And he has been really good. So let's transition over to the positive here for just a little bit. Because like I said, actually, no, we're going to go positive now. Christian Braun, 28 points, 11 of 15 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3, +4 in a game the Nuggets lost by 8, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. Did have a couple turnovers, who cares? I really liked what I've seen from Christian and just aggressively driving and confidently driving over the course of these last few weeks. He recently set a career high against Houston in that loss, and then he set a career high again today or yesterday in that loss against Chicago. He looks like he is driving with more consistency and finding the windows, finding the opportunities. There were a couple of opportunities for him to go left, go right. Most of the time he goes right. That's his tendency for the most part. He's a right-handed, right leg driver. trying to go down the right side of the lane. It's where he's most comfortable, and he'll get better and more versatile in terms of how he drives and what he's doing. But a switch has just kind of flipped for him with the ball in his hands. It's very interesting to watch. He had some reps, and I remember kind of at this moment last year where we were talking about, man, Christian's having a really down year. He's not really creating anything with the ball in his hands. Whenever he drives, he just kind of drives into nowhere. Now he's not doing that. He's driving, and even when he doesn't really have a window, he's still rising up and shooting with more confidence. He's getting to that kind of floater. He is it's like a jump stop and then turning around and shooting a hook shot. It's those ones where he uses his athleticism a little bit. He's got the 40-inch vertical, of course. Why not take advantage of it? And he has taken advantage of it for sure. He's also one of the only guys that I can point to yesterday and said, yeah, he tried defensively. He really tried. And it was cool to watch him. And it's cool to see the growth with him. Over the course of these last few games, he has had some really impressive moments. And I've just been very impressed with how he's handled himself during this time. He started every single game. He has been Denver's metronome for the most part. They're for a guy who's a third-year player, you wouldn't expect that all the time. In the last, let's count this. Actually, we're going to do, so his entire year, he's started 45 games. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times that he has not gotten into double figures. 39 times he has scored at least 10 points. That's crazy. Think about that and process that. You know how many points KCP averaged last year? 10 points. Christian's done that 39 times. And there is a level of growth that they are going to see. And I've just been very impressed with the way that he has continued to improve. I don't think he would be improving to the degree that he has if KCP was still here. But that's the really tough balance here, because obviously, and we're getting a whole bunch of other folks, Don't Tell Santa Cruz is here. And everybody's calling me a casual, being KCP's defense is way better. I'm not sure it's way better. Braun has been good. And yesterday I thought he was good. What? Okay. Alexander Williams been in the comments of both of my shows, just absolutely lambasting for, oh man, positive bias towards Murray, as if I didn't call Jokic the greatest player I've ever seen, in previous shows. Look, I can call it the way that I see it, and Jokic's defense was really bad. Murray's offense was really bad yesterday. Murray's offense was horrible yesterday overall, and he continues to be one of the problems for Denver. 8 of 20 from the field for 18 points, 1 of 5 from 3. He still won't get up threes. He still won't create those easier shots for himself, and he takes a whole bunch of tough shots. And that's just not a good formula. But this is not about Murray right now. We're not talking about Murray right now. We're talking about Christian Braun. Denver would be better right now if they had this version of Christian Braun and KCP. They would be good if they had KCP and last year's version of Christian Braun, let's say just a slightly better version. And that's what I would expect if Christian was the 6th man again this year. If they had, actually, Christian probably would have been starting instead of Russ if we had to think about it. If they like what they have now with Christian here and KCP not here, clearly the team is overall worse, but I'm not sure you can really blame that on Christian specifically. There's other aspects of this team that have definitely fallen off. So would Denver be better if they had both of those guys? Absolutely. But I don't know if they get the best version of Christian Braun if they still have KCP in tow. So you kind of have to balance it, and that's the natural point of development here. So I'm very curious to see where Christian continues to go, if this is something where he can just be a mainstay for the Nuggets, like if he's going to get paid and get that KCP contract going forward, that'll be interesting. Yeah, we'll see. True Teller says, Ryan, I was told if we were a second apron team, you can't make trades. Yet Milwaukee is about to trade for Jimmy Butler. Can we all agree the Cronkies are cheap? Well, yeah, that's like the Cronkies did not want to go into the second apron, and we knew that. We knew that this offseason. We knew I've said that, but that's also something that they can't really control. Like everybody can BS and moan about it, but like that's not something that I can control. Like I will say it, I'll report on it. Like, yeah, the Cronkies did not want to go into the second apron this offseason. It's one of the reasons why KCP was gone. But everybody was also in line with the idea that Christian Braun needed to start going forward, and he was supposed to be the starter going forward, and the team really believed in him from top down, like ownership, front office, coaching staff. Everybody knew what Christian could do. And I think he's like at least paid off his part of it. Like can't really blame Christian for that, you know? But yeah, Milwaukee, the reason why they are able to trade for Jimmy Butler is by sending out Pat Connaughton's contract, and they're probably going to have to pay a pretty penny with draft picks in order to get somebody to take on Pat Connaughton's in order to take on his contract. So that's the reason. Like they still have to get to the second apron. That's still a thing. Yeah, it's still a thing that they have to do. Like they're going to trade Chris Middleton and potentially somebody like Brook Lopez and Pat Connaughton, who's been bad this year for them, for Jimmy Butler, for an expiring Jimmy Butler contract. Like I wouldn't want to trade for Jimmy Butler for this Nuggets team anyway. Like I think he'd be fine, but like the detriments probably outweigh the benefits with him. Probably. I don't know. But look, Christian's been good. He's been very steady over the course of these past few weeks. In his last, 7 games, he's averaged 19 points per game, 4.4 rebounds, 1.9 assists. He's shooting 67% from the field, 47% from three, 90% from the line. Really impressive numbers for Christian. Given that he's still so low volume in each of those categories, like he'll oscillate and he'll go back to averaging about 12 to 13 to 14 points per game pretty easily, but still pretty impressive to see what he's put together lately. Okay. Zach LaVine was very good in the fourth quarter, especially of this last game. He's a guy that can create his own shot and can take advantage of having very little space on the perimeter and just rise up and hit some threes. He went 5 of 10 from 3. And if anybody's complaining about Denver's lack of three-point shooting volume, Zach LaVine would probably help them. He's not the only one. Denver needs to get more threes, but they need to get it by adding more shooters to their entire rotation to make it so that some of those guys don't feel like they're getting taking contested threes all the time. It's tough. That's a tough place. Yeah, Zach LaVine shut the door, as him as mentions what I said last night. It wasn't like it was a good Zach LaVine game up until that point, but he made it a good game by closing the door on the Nuggets. Last thing I'm going to mention, because I'm annoyed. You can't replicate urgency in the NBA. It's very difficult to, when you aren't a desperate team, when you're not in a desperate place, and it's not like you don't care. That's not what anybody's trying to say. But there's a different level of care in a couple of different situations. And a road game against an Eastern Conference opponent in the middle of a 5-game road trip, it's tough sometimes for a team like the Nuggets to really motivate for that one. And I just don't think that they had the extreme motivation for this particular game last night. And if they did have the extreme motivation, then we would have seen a different level of defense. They wouldn't have given up 129 and 53 threes. Like, ain't no way. So you can't replicate what that looks like. And a lot of teams are able to generate that urgency, and they feel like, hey, this is a big one for us. This is a statement opportunity for us. Let's go out and do it. OKC has been able to do that on a consistent basis. Cleveland's been able to do that on a consistent basis. Boston's not replicating their urgency, and they are faltering a little bit this season as a result of that. Like, if you look at Boston's record on the year, it's not tremendous anymore. They're still overall good. Like, they're 32-15. Denver's 28-18. But they're like, those teams are not so different from each other that you feel like they're in such a massively different tier. Boston has had some of the same struggles that the Nuggets have had. And yet, Denver's had these against some of the worst teams. And they've had it when a lot of their guys are still playing. Like, sometimes it might be difficult to generate that urgency when you've got guys like Hunter Tyson playing, or Jalen Pickett playing, or Dario Saric or Zeke Naji playing, because then it doesn't feel as like serious. But when you've got 8 guys playing, and you've got Aaron Gordon at the backup 5, and you've even cut out DeAndre Jordan, who I think has been playing pretty well for Denver of late. If you cut him out of the rotation and you go with an 8-man group, this is supposed to be Denver's playoff rotation, and then you allow 129 points to the Chicago Bulls, that's pretty tough. Like, that's not a strong indication to me of how much you care. Because if they really cared, like, Chicago would not have scored over 110, let alone 120, let alone 129. Like, it wouldn't be close. So, yeah, it's hard to generate that. And I think when you're the Nuggets and you're playing an 82-game schedule, it can be hard to manufacture something that doesn't exist, which is, hey, we need to really buckle up for this Chicago team. Like, I don't blame them for not being super urgent in that regard. But it's what's going to prevent Denver from winning 55 games or 54 games, maybe even 53 games. Could they win 52? Maybe. Could they win 51? Sure. Will they win 50? Probably about 50, I would say. But they're not going to win 57 like they won last year. They're not going to win 58. That's not going to happen. And like, we've already kind of crossed that point of no return here. If Denver went undefeated for the rest of the season, they would win 64 games. They're not going to go undefeated for the rest of the season. They'll probably lose at least another 12, which puts them at 52-30. So that's my updated prediction about whether that allows Denver to be a 2 seed, a 3 seed, a 4 seed, or a 5 seed. I don't really know, but I bet that they win about 52 games. It'll be okay. They'll be fine. But does this feel like a championship team right now? No. We'll see if they could change that over the course of these next few weeks, next few months. We'll see. All right. That is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. Thank you for tuning into the show. Apologies for clearly being a lesser podcaster today, folks. Definitely getting some unfortunate comments, but trying my best. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. I really do appreciate you for the positive commentary. And let's see what happens for Denver next time. I'll be back on Thursday morning after the Nuggets play on Wednesday night against the New York Knicks. Oh, and I'm going to be in studio tomorrow for Mile High Sports for MHS Today. So we're going to be doing a live show. I'll be in studio with Sean Drotard about noon on Mountain Time. So make sure to go check that out if you're interested. Thank you for tuning in. Hit the like button. We'll talk to you guys very, very soon.